All right, so welcome back. So today we're going to continue our discussion of graphing trig functions. Um, Today we will be graphing the cosine function with a phase shift. So, all right, so just kind of reviewing real quick before we get into the problems. Okay, if you've seen my other videos, I've done this every time, so hopefully by now this should be kind of just not new information, but this should just be a review. So A is amplitude, right? So that tells you how tall and how far above and below the x-axis you go. Okay. Your period length, just like for sine, your period length, you're going to have to take 2 pi and divide it by your b value, right? And then just like in my last video with sine, for phase shift, right, you have to take your c value divided by your b, okay? So let's get to the problems here, and you can kind of start to see how these three functions affect the basic cosine wave and how to graph those. Okay, so our first example, y equals cosine of x minus pi over 2, right? So let's identify some of the big three things, and then we'll get the points, and then we'll plot them. Okay, so our amplitude here is 1, because there's no number in front of cosine, so it's an understood 1. Our period length, I'll represent that as p, is pi over 2 divided by the number in front of x, our b value, which is 1, right? So our period length is 2 pi. And then our phase shift, right? So this tells us how much we're shifting the graph left or right. I'm going to have to take 2 pi divided by the number in front of the x, which is 1. So that is 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. Okay, so, all right, so before we can graph, now we need, sorry about that. Before we can graph, we need our 5 points. So just like cosine, or just like sine and the cosine wave in my last videos, the 5 basic points that cosine crosses or that you use are 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Now, I haven't said this in other videos. Where I got these 5 points, it all goes back to the unit circle and realizing where each of these functions, cosine and sine, are 0 and 1. So if you look at the unit circle for sine and cosine, they are 0. It's going to be 0 at these 0 or 1, depending on how you go around, at these various 5 points around the unit circle. So that's how I got those 5. Okay, so now because my phase shift, there is a phase shift, I have to, and it's negative, right? So that means the graph is shifting to the right. I'm going to have to add pi over 2 to each of these 5 points. Okay. Now doing this isn't too bad. Some of them can get kind of tricky because the fractions, but this is just halves and ones, and so that's pretty easy. So 0 plus pi over 2 is pi over 2. A half plus a half is a whole. 1 plus a half is 1.5, or 3 pi over 2. 1.5 plus 1/2 is 2, so that's 2 pi. And then 1.5 plus, or 2 plus 1, 2 plus a half is 2.5, or 5 pi over 2. Okay, so there's my 5 points. Now I'll take those 5 points and I will plot those along the x-axis. So this is pi over 2. Here is pi. Here is 3 pi over 2. Here is 2 pi. And my last point is 5 pi over 2. Now remember, Cosine and sine differ. Sine starts at the x-axis, right? And then you go up or down depending on whether your amplitude is positive or negative. Cosine starts at your amplitude. That's the big difference, right? So because your amplitude is positive 1, I'm going to start at the positive 1 up here, and then it crosses the x-axis at pi, and then at 3 pi over 2, I'm at my negative amplitude. So that's negative 1. I come back to 2 pi, or the x-axis at 2 pi, and then 5 pi over 2, I'm back at my original starting point. So if I connect, it looks like that, right? And now it is kind of something to note that while it does just look like a V, like something like a quadratic, this wave continues in both directions for infinity, right? It keeps going. So, but this is just one period length. If you continued again, you could keep going, and you'd get the nice wave that is usually there. Okay. The next one, 3 cosine of 2x plus pi. Okay. All right. So let me kind of divide this. Hopefully, I can squeeze this all in over here. Right. So my amplitude, right, is 3. That's the number in front of cosine. Your period length is 2 pi divided by 2, right? That's your b value is 2. So 2 pi divided by 2 is pi, right? And that's going to change some things. That's going to change these 5 original points because it's not 2 pi. So I'll get to that in a minute, right? And then our phase shift, I'll abbreviate that as PS, right, is your c value. So that's pi divided by your b value, which is 2. All right. So like I said just a second ago, because your period length is different, it's half as long as it normally is, right? To get those 5 starting points that we'll add our phase shift to, I have to take my value, which in this case is pi, and I'll divide it by 4, right? So pi divided by 4 is pi over 4. There's nothing to simplify, right? So what that means is instead of 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, my 5 points will be 0, pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and 4 pi over 4, which is pi, right? So 0 to pi, that matches my period length, right? Now I have to add in my phase shift. Well, or I have to take into account my phase shift. Now, if you go back to the original problem, your phase shift now, this is plus. All the other problems I've ever done, this is if you look at this, this is minus. Okay, so when it's minus, the graph is shifting to the right. All right, when it's plus, the graph shifts to the left. This is where you just have to keep this in. You just have to kind of remember that little rule, that little trick. All right, so what that means is instead of adding pi over 2 each time, now you must subtract pi over 2. Subtract half. Okay, so if you do this, you get negative pi over 2. A fourth minus a half is a negative fourth. Okay, a half minus a half is 0. 3/4 minus a half is a fourth. That's a 4. Sorry, my board. Okay, and then 1 minus a half is a half. Okay, so my 5 points now. This is the first one that we're going to start on to the left of the y-axis. Okay, so I have negative a half. If I have negative a half, so negative pi over 2. So negative pi over 2. This is negative pi over 4. Here's 0. Let me redraw this because that drawing. Okay. Alright, so I'll do this. I'll give myself some more room. So here's negative pi over 2. Here's negative pi over 4. There's 0. Here's pi over 4. And here is pi over 2. Okay. Now my amplitude is 3. So I'm going to plot those 3 points on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3. And I'll plot 3 below. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Right? Then their cosine starts either above the x-axis or below, depending on what your amplitude is. So since it's positive 3, I'm going to start up here at y equals positive 3, and then at negative pi over 4, that's where I cross the x-axis. That's the next point. And then at y equals or x equals 0, that's where you're at the negative, so you're down here, and then the next point you're back at the x-axis, and then you're back up here, right? So your sine wave, if I can connect this, looks something like that, right? So it's kind of a little bit, it's really tall, and it's been shoved over, so it looks a lot different than other cosine waves that we've graphed, okay? Hope this helps. If it does, great. If not, please comment below, and I will try to get those questions answered. Thanks.